Well, good morning, everyone. In the Buddhist texts, 0 is perhaps the most powerful number because it adds absolutely nothing and transforms everything. It is no thing, and yet it is not nothing. Coming to 0 brings us beyond the somethingness of self and beyond clinging to form. There is the story of the Buddha as he walked through a village. There was a young man who was busy, had places to go, things to do, people to see, but was very interested in the teachings of the Buddha, but didn't have a lot of time. And so as the Buddha passed through, he scampered up and was walking along with him and kind of badgering him a little bit and pestering him. He's like, tell me about enlightenment. I need to know what enlightenment is all about and this awakening stuff, but I need to go. So what's the quickest, fastest way you can get me to enlightenment? And after a while, with enough pestering, the Buddha stopped and he turned to him and he said this: whenever you see a form, let there be only seeing. Whenever you hear a sound, let there be only hearing. Whenever you taste a flavor, let there be only tasting. Whenever you experience a sensation, let there be only sensing. And when a thought arises in the mind, let it be just a natural phenomenon arising. When it is like this, there will be no self. No moving about here and there, scampering from one place to another, stopping, starting. That is the end of dukkha. That is the end of suffering. And so in each moment there is only the arising of experience. I, self, me, mine. These things are added to the experience. When we say my thoughts or I'm thinking or the my and the I are extra, they do not belong to the thought itself. There was an interesting video that came up in the video Dharma and discussion a couple weeks ago. And it's just music and some words. But I want to provide some excerpts from this video. So just breathing, noticing your breath for a moment, coming back to that. Consider these words for a moment, or better yet, don't consider them. The heart pumps all by itself. Breathing occurs without you doing it. The brain associates concepts with other concepts all by itself. The mind is thinking, or rather randomly babbling, all on its own. If you try to stop thinking or breathing, they start right back up again. This means that you are not the thinker of thoughts, nor the doer of deeds. The mind-body is really more of an it than a me. The brain's thoughts, the body's actions are just the result of cells doing work. We are the awareness that is watching the automatic functioning. We are consciousness that is simply aware of itself as existing. We have mistakenly identified ourselves with the physical mind body. We have mistakenly identified ourselves with form. It has been an erroneous belief all along. The real you is not confined to a brain. It is infinitely everything and still no thing. The silent, formless observer. The one that knows that there is hunger in the body, that there is a sound, that there is a sensation of coolness. We are the awareness, the knowing. But then again, thinking about all that won't help. We must stop identifying with thoughts altogether to realize that. In Buddhism, they talk about the 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates of clinging to human form. The first being form or matter, material form. The second being feelings, sensations, sensory experience of an object as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Every experience has those 3 qualities to them at that level of just sensation. Next comes the sensory or the mental process that registers, recognizes, or labels shape of a tree, the emotion of fear, the color green, or in the case of Unity Temple, maroon. And so a perception develops as we register this. And then from there is a mental formation. Volition, karmic activities, all types of mental imprints and conditioning that is triggered by this experience. And finally, consciousness, without which there would be no experience at all. Awareness and a discrimination of the components or the aspects of the experience. So I was leaving the parking lot Friday at my apartment, and as I'm beginning to exit out, I hear a boom. And this was at 7:30 in the morning. And so I turned quickly to look over, and there was a young person who had set off a firework. 7:30 Friday morning. And it was incredibly fascinating because in that moment, I felt the wash and the flood of there was this experience. There was a boom. There was a register of unpleasantness. And then came the labels and the judgment and the commentary and the stories. And this all happens within a fraction of a second. And in this moment of experience and in the labeling and the judgment, the story and the commentaries, my consciousness was created in that moment. And I actually slowed the car down as I approached the stop sign at the end of the parking lot, took a few deep breaths and relaxed into it, and was simply aware of and noted the whole experience. Nothing needed to be done, said, retracted. However, there was a time in my life when windows would have come down and screaming would have occurred. You young people have no respect. But more than bringing that kind of aggravation, fear, anger into the world, I could breathe and rejoice at bringing awareness into the world. Bringing in a moment of consciousness. As I was able to place a wedge of awareness into the experience. Awareness unties every knot that we have. So instead of creating, as I would have earlier in my life, ill will amongst the neighborhood, hollering, yelling, screaming, I probably would have sped down the street angry, and that's how I got a few tickets in my younger days. Completely unaware, completely unconscious of what was going on. Instead of that, I could place a wedge of awareness there and be fully aware of what just happened. And the skandhas are a wonderful tool, as is mindfulness, as is oneness, because I can promise you I set a few of those things off when I was his age as well. I don't think I ever got up at 7:30 in the morning, but I did set a few of those things off. And so instead there was a moment of rejoicing to see all of that in a fraction of a second, and then to take a breath, and then again to move forward and into my day, relaxed, loving, compassionate. There's another wonderful story of the Buddha giving a teaching where hundreds of monks and students were assembled, and the Buddha was seated. They'd spent time in noble silence. The bell was awakened. Everybody opened their eyes and looked up and was ready for the teaching. And instead, the Buddha simply picked up a flower and held it up. And there was one monk, and I forgot his name. He smiled, and at that moment was awakened. Because it was such a profound experience and such a profound teaching, there was nothing to engage, no one to be engaged. It was just a moment of pure consciousness, pure awareness, no stories, no judgment, no commentary. The moment of opening to the unconditioned confirms most deeply the liberating emptiness of self. In that moment, we come to zero. From this understanding of selflessness comes a deep connection with everything. We need not rely on certain forms of relationship to feel connected, because there is no longer separation. There is no one to be separated. The writer Wei Wu Wei wrote this: Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one.